Ryan Robertson, another in a line of remarkably gifted basketball players from the St. Louis area. Ryan is legendary at St. Charles West High School. His name is all over their record books. Ryan holds a single-season scoring record, 26 points per game. The single-game assist record, 19. He was a three-time All-Metro selection, a three-time All-State selection. He was the High School Player of the Year in Missouri twice, and a McDonald's All-American selection. He was recruited by legendary coach Roy Williams at Kansas. At KU, he accomplished what seems to be almost impossible. In 4 years, Ryan never missed a practice and never missed a game. He played in a KU record 142 games in his 4 years at Lawrence. He started every game in his senior season. When playing against Ryan, it was not a good idea to foul him. In 4 years at Kansas, he was an 80% free throw shooter, 86% in his senior season. A great passer with a superb floor presence, he could also score. He poured in 31 points against Kentucky in an NCAA tournament game. Ryan was an academic All-American in 1999. He was a second-round pick in the NBA draft, the 45th selection, taken by the Sacramento Kings. While his NBA career was certainly not what he had hoped it would be, he also played in the ABA, and his 5-year pro career was one of those play hoops and see the world, at least see Europe. He played in Holland, France, and Greece. He will have to explain the name of the team in Holland, the Eiffel Towers. We're proud to welcome Ryan Robertson into the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame.
Funny thing is, I actually got my first introduction to Ryan as a basketball player, not as a reporter or radio announcer. It was actually as a youth basketball coach. I kind of dabbled in that when I wasn't covering games. I was helping a buddy coach an 8th grade team, and we played this game at the old ABC rec league. And
one of my favorite gyms.
Yeah. I know they should name it after you. But they played a team. My buddy coached, Mike Martin coached a team called the St. Louis Gators, and we had played the Gators earlier. It was a good game, and then we played them again. And then I saw they had this thin 6'1" guard, looked pretty good. Then the second half, he just exploded. Ryan hit 40. I think he had like 40. This is 8th grade, but he looked like I was like, Mike snuck a senior in high school here on me. I had to talk to Mike, and he told me, I said, who is this guy? This is somebody I definitely have to follow. Oh, this is Ryan Robertson. He's from Oklahoma. He's going to St. Charles West. So I said, I'll definitely be at St. Charles West the next 4 years. So that brings us to St. Charles West, obviously the greatest player in the history of that storied program, but you played for a Hall of Fame coach in Terry Hollander. What did he mean to your development as a great player at St. Charles West?
Yeah, he's here tonight.
Yes.
So basketball for me was never more fun than my 4 years in high school. My wife is here tonight, and she was my high school sweetheart. My dad was the assistant coach on our state championship team. Coach Hollander was our Hall of Fame coach. My brother played on that team, who then played at St. Louis U. And so those 4 years were just about as much fun as I ever had on a basketball court. And then it kind of capped off with the state championship in my senior year.
Of course, that state championship, I remember I was at that game at the Hearn Center. You beat Vashon, but you were trailing late in the game, and you hit 3 big three-pointers. What was the feeling? First, winning a state championship, and then taking over the game in the fourth quarter like that and on such a big stage.
You know, I've heard everybody tonight talk kind of just about the competitive nature that everybody has, and for me, it was a game. It was a normal, regular game, and it got late, and my competitive juices sort of took over, and I know athletes talk about this all the time, but in that last 5 minutes or so, I just sort of got into a zone, and it wasn't really a matter of, how big the game it was. It was just a regular basketball game at that point, and so was able to hit a few threes there down the end, and we were able to pull it out. But again, one of the greatest accomplishments that I ever had on a basketball court was that state championship.
Being that you and your brother Troy are a year apart, you got a chance to play varsity basketball with each other for 3 years. 3 years, you're a year ahead of him. How special was that to not win a state championship, but do it with your brother Troy?
Yeah, it was the most fun for my family, as you can imagine, and not only those 3 years, but even years after that, playing together in pickup games, and we've won like 10 consecutive church leagues at Calvary Church in St. Charles.
Ringers.
It's 4-on-4 on carpet, and Troy and I and a couple of people from our church group play, but it doesn't really matter. And, Troy and I can just look at each other and sort of know what we're going to do, and we can go back court. He can cut back door or whatever just by a look because we played together for so long. And so just great memories and great fun on the basketball court.
Who recruited you to these church league teams here?
Johnny Robertson.
Yeah, of course.
My dad.
Then comes one of the greatest honors after a great, well, first of all, you set a record that's very unique in high school that was set by Jason Kidd, who was a future NBA Hall of Famer, played 19 years. You broke his national high school record for combined points and assists. Now, you know, you're a point guard. In the old school point guard, the point guard is to pass the ball, make sure the forwards and centers get the buckets, and you get the assist and run the offense. Today's point guard now, you look at Steph Curry, Russell Westbrook, Trae Young, they're the ones to score now. They score a lot of points. You were able to do both. How were you able to walk that fine line, be a dominant scorer, but a dominant floor leader who could run the offense and get your teammates involved?
I just really always enjoyed passing more than I did scoring. I got great thrill on seeing my teammates do really well and score lots of points. The points just sort of came a lot of times just because of my height or physical abilities at the time I was in high school, but I just really enjoyed kind of getting my teammates involved. But, you know, you bring up that record, the Jason Kidd record, and Bob told that heartfelt story about his Hall of Fame, or not the Hall of Fame, but the Pro Bowl, and not sure, you know, why he was in there and somebody else was there. I've thought about that Jason Kidd record a lot, and I have no idea where it's from, and I don't know if it's accurate, and I've never done anything to correct it.
Got your story and you're sticking with it. Right?
I mean, because when you really think about it, like there are high school players now that have scored 5,000 points in a career. And yet, you know, people still credit me with some sort of combined points and assist record. So I haven't done anything to correct that. So I'm going to roll with it for the time being. But you know, just being in the same class with Jason Kidd and all those great players, you know, quite an honor.
Of course, and when we talk about one of the highest honors for a high school is to be selected to play in the McDonald's All-American game. And in 1995, it was in St. Louis at what was the Kiel Center, kind of like what Ryan just talked about, playing in the Major League All-Star game in his hometown, St. Louis. How about playing in the McDonald's All-American game with all those great players right here in your hometown?
Yeah, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Vince Carter, Steph Marbury.
Yeah, one of the greatest McDonald's All-American classes probably ever.
Yeah, it was a very good class. It really kind of showed me the level that I needed to get to. I'm not sure that when I got to that game I was quite at the level that I needed to be effective at Kansas, and so that was a real wake-up call for me to see the real talent that really existed all over the country. But it was an incredible experience, and you know, the athletes and the players in that game were, as you say, the best that they've ever had.
Why Kansas? There's so many great programs around the country. What made you choose Kansas?
Yeah, I sort of wonder if I would have gotten into the Hall of Fame a lot sooner if I had gone to Mizzou, actually.
I wasn't going to say anything, but you just had to go there.
It feels like it had been a long time, and if I had gone to Mizzou, maybe I'd be here sooner. Kansas was an incredible program. It was a really tough decision. Coach Stewart was an awesome recruiter, and it came down to the fact that just Coach Williams had been recruiting me for a couple of years before Coach Stewart. And, you know, I got to play with some incredible players at Kansas. My roommate in college was Paul Pierce, who
was in that McDonald's game?
Who was in that McDonald's All-American game, and he's going to go into the Basketball Hall of Fame. And, you know, he was from Inglewood, California, completely opposite from the mean streets of St. Charles, Missouri. And so, you know, he and I were completely different. But from the moment I met Paul, he was just determined to be the best. He was determined to be in the Hall of Fame. He was determined to be in the NBA. He was the most incredible player I had ever been around. But for as good of a player as he was, that's how bad of a roommate he was. He was the worst roommate you could have ever had. He was messy and loud and inconsiderate, and I've never forgiven him for it.
He hasn't changed. Just watch him on TV.
Yeah,
Talk about obviously playing in Kansas, one of the storied programs, but also a Fog Allen Fieldhouse. What was it like to put that uniform on and play in Allen Fieldhouse for 4 seasons in a row?
It's you know, it's Busch Stadium, it's Wrigley Field, it's Fenway Park, and so to be able to play in such a historic building, and you know, the great players that have played there and the games that have been played there, it was I've just been very, very blessed on the basketball court. Not only to be able to play there, but I played for a Hall of Fame high school basketball coach and Roy Williams, who's in the Hall of Fame, and I've just had a very blessed basketball career.
You also had some really good games at the Hearn Center as well. Obviously, you were very popular when you went there with your Kansas blue uniform on. How much did that motivate you when you went to Hearns? Especially, it's one thing, you're in Kansas anyway, but here's a local guy playing for the Jayhawks, and then you come up and give him the business.
Well, yeah, so for 3 years, we were really good. My first 3 years, we were number one in the country, all 3 of those years, actually. And we lost all 3 times we went to the Hearns Center. That Mizzou just played really good against us, and it wasn't until my senior year when we weren't as good, actually, that we were able to finally pull out a victory, which meant, a lot, because as a Missouri boy, if I had gone 4 years with not getting a victory there, that would have been really painful. So I was glad to at least get one, but Mizzou was always really, really tough at home for sure.
Another great evening I can remember, especially because I was on the radio. I guess it was 1999, your senior year. The Kansas Jayhawks came to the Kiel Center and played St. Louis University with your brother Troy on ESPN. Other than the Billiken victory, which I liked, what was the experience? You and your brother, the Robertsons, on national TV, 20,000 people in the building. It's kind of your night, you guys.
Yeah, it was 20,000. It was a horrible night, actually. It sucked. It was great for my brother Troy. It was great for the Billikens. Believe it or not, I sit here today and I think I'm very happy for Troy and their program that night. We were, as I said, my senior year, not quite as good as we had been the 3 previous years, and so I wish we had played better. And as the year went on, not that anybody really cares, we did get better, but that night SLU was just better.
When you went, you had a wide open layup one night, then all of a sudden somebody grabbed you and just threw you to the ground. Did you realize who it was at the time or after?
I've got a picture of when Troy he gave me a cheap shot, like right late in the second half or first half. And my dad's got a picture of that shot in his office, actually.
His own brother hard fouled him on national TV.
Yeah.
It was great. But also, like you said, you had a chance to play with the Sacramento Kings.
Play is a strong
drafted.
Play,
But
yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a great team. Chris Webber.
Yep.
That was a team that was competing for NBA championships before you went overseas. Describe your pro experience real quick.
It was an incredible experience all the way through. So the NBA all the way to Europe. My wife and I were over in Europe together. We traveled a ton. It was an experience of a lifetime. I was actually drafted in 1999, number 45 overall by the Sacramento Kings. 10 draft picks after me, number 55 by the San Antonio Spurs. They selected Manu Ginobili. So the Kings could have had a Hall of Famer. And instead they got me.
A Hall of Famer.
Well, I mean, tonight, now I'm a Hall of Famer. But at the time, so just, the poor Kings, they can't catch a break. So they could have had Manu Ginobili, and they got me instead.
Well, St. Charles West in Kansas were very fine with Ryan Robertson. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome St. Louis Hall of Famer Ryan Robertson, one of the greatest point guards ever in the city of St. Louis.